Marshallville, Georgia is a very small town in rural Macon County with a population of a little over 1,000 people. But don't let the size of the town fool you. Incredibly, Marshallville claims two rather prominent people who make their living in the National Football League. One is the all-pro linebacker with the Baltimore Ravens, formerly of the Chicago Bears, by the name of Roquan Smith. If you follow football at all, you know him. The other is my guest today, James Liipfert. Currently, James is the Director of College Scouting for the Houston Texans NFL franchise. Trust me, that is no small job. His primary responsibility is to oversee the evaluation and scouting of college football players who are eligible for the NFL draft. A big-time job for a small-town guy. In 2008, I wrote an article about James that ended up in a book I wrote. I will quote a few sentences from that article from 15 years ago. And I quote, "I have often wondered how many people give up when the reward for hard work is right around the corner. I have a feeling it happens much too often. For the past 4 years or so, I had my eye on a young man who has continued to work extremely hard when most would have given up a long time ago. I have to tell you, this Georgia Bulldog will be looking for number 30 every time Georgia Tech takes the field this year. And I will be cheering James Liipfert on every play. More importantly, I will be cheering him on in life after he graduates next year. Trust me, this strong, tough, and relentless gentleman will accomplish great things before he is done." End of quote. I never claimed to be clairvoyant, but one thing is for certain. I was right that day. I was so right, I can even use my 15-year-old prediction to name this podcast, "I Told You So." And just for the record, I'll make one more prediction. At 37 years of age now, he ain't done. In fact, he's just getting started. His story is not even close to being fully written. But even in the first half of his career, we can all learn from it. When you listen to this conversation, I have no doubt you will agree.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.
This is Bruce Goddard, and you're listening to the View from a Hearse podcast. I got with me, man, I go a long way back with this guy. He is Director of Scouting for the Houston Texans. That's the NFL franchise, for those that don't know. I think most of you will. His name is James Liipfert. James, I think I first met you when Luke went to Westfield. You guys were in the 8th grade, and all you hard-headed guys were hanging around at our house, right?
We were told there's a tall tale that goes with your son coming to Westfield. We were told that this 6'6", 220-pound, going to score 30 points a game basketball player was coming to Westfield from Reynolds. And I love Luke, but he wasn't quite that. He was a lot of things, but he wasn't quite that.
That's true.
We met this summer, I want to say, going into 8th grade. And man, you've got awesome sons, and Luke's one of my favorite people on the planet.
Yeah, he's a crazy one. I tell you that.
He is.
He's off the charts. So James, let me tell you, the other night I was watching the NFL draft. I don't usually do that. I don't know. I was watching it just to see what was going on, and then I watched the Houston Texans, and you guys did some pretty magical stuff there, and you ended up getting the second and third picks in the first round. One of them was C.J. Stroud of Ohio State. The other was Will Anderson. And I said, wow, boy, they just upped their team. And then they panned into the room, and I saw you hugging and high-fiving, and I thought, wow, James is right in the middle of all that. That has to be a lot of fun, what you're doing, right?
Yeah, it was a culmination that whole weekend. You go Thursday, Friday, and into the evening on Saturday. That whole weekend is a culmination of a lot of hard work done by a lot of people. And it is. I'm a small part of it. We've got 7 scouts that live on the road full time, and they spend time at Ohio State and Alabama, down to Miami of Ohio, down to Alabama State, and everywhere in between. So it's just really the way I refer to that weekend. It's the Super Bowl for the 32 scouting staffs across the league. And I mean, I'd say 90% of our job is based around you're doing things to get ready for that last weekend in April, because it's a crucial opportunity to add young players to your team. And we just tried to do the best job we can, from the first 2 guys we took to the other 7 guys that we drafted. They, in my eyes, they're all important, kind of regardless of where they were taken. And then we signed 9 guys. They're known as undrafted free agents that were not selected by a team, but they still are part of the team. And so we signed 9 guys from all over the country to make it a grand total of 18 by the end of the day on Saturday that we're bringing to Houston. So excited about every last one of them, honestly.
Oh, I'm sure. So I was thinking, and the work that has to go into that, and you're being very modest. You've got a lot of responsibility with that team, and I know you've probably been in all those roles in your career. My gosh, you've been doing this 16 to 17 years, I imagine now, almost, right? How long have you been?
Correct. I want to say this is entering year 15 for me this upcoming season.
So all those roles of people being regional scouts and national scouts and all that, you've done all of it, but you're in that seat where you've got responsibility for all of it. So you're doing stuff that I predicted you would do. And if you remember, in 2008, I wrote an article about you that ended up in one of my little books that a lot of people have read. And I was talking about that there was no telling what James Liipfert was going to do in his life. Do you remember that? You remember me writing that?
I still have the book. You know, my wife Lacey and I, we've moved around a couple times, and you know, you have those, like, call it 2 to 3 dozen books that always seem to travel with you at all times. And you're going to have to help me on this. For the gentleman's name on the front of that book, it's like the life and times of, what was his name again?
Euland Brown.
There you go. So I it was very cool to me at the time, 15 years ago, to see that somebody had written something about me. I was humbled, and you know, I appreciated you giving my parents a shout out in that article, because they're just the best people of all time. So
I want to talk about him here too. So the story of Euland Brown was really about a man that had a muscular disease and refused to give up. He always found himself in the ditch, and he didn't know what the word quit was. And so you're in that book because you didn't know what the word quit was. And I saw you. I had a front row seat watching you as a teenager grow up. You, number one, I saw somebody with tremendous people skills. I saw somebody that was very smart. You were a student. You graduated, I'm sure, at the top of your class. If you didn't, you could have. You were an influencer around others. You were a gentleman to others. You were very athletic. You were all-state football player, but you probably were all-state basketball player, baseball player. You came from this little bitty town that nobody's ever heard of called Marshallville, Georgia, where we talk about welcome to Marshallville and hurry back is on the same sign. That's really true. I can promise you, you're the first person from Marshallville to ever be the director of scouting for an NFL franchise.
I haven't looked at the history books of Marshallville, but I'd say that's probably correct.
I would think it was.
We arrived when I came home, and I love Marshallville. Marshallville's in my DNA for sure. But I get back probably once, maybe twice a year now. But I want to say this was 4 or 5 years ago, and Roquan was drafted by Chicago. And, you know, Roquan went to Macon County, but lived in Marshallville a lot. And I don't know Roquan very well at all, but I do know he was kind of back and forth, Marshallville to Montezuma. So at least we're one of those small Georgia towns that have that home of so-and-so first round draft pick to our name now. So we've got Roquan, and then way down the line, there's my name somewhere.
But isn't that amazing?
We get to claim Roquan, which is way cooler than me.
So one of the things I talk about on this podcast, James, is the amazing people that come out of these little towns that, you know, people don't realize across this country, little towns have produced some amazing people. And the fact that he's talking about Roquan Smith, who's an all-star middle linebacker in the NFL, and James both came from this little town, Marshallville, Georgia. Isn't that crazy? And that's absolutely crazy. So I'm going to go back and talk about when I was talking about what you did, and I watched you. And one of the things that I picked up on really quick, I knew your parents before I knew you. I got to know them much better, you know, when you and Luke were in school together, and I was at Westfield all the time. But you got some half Dunning DNA and half Liipfert DNA running through your veins, and that's some pretty strong DNA. And I know that your parents are a very important part of whatever success you've had in life. And just talk about that, because I think that's important. These they're not perfect people. They don't claim to be, but I tell you what they did. They were great parents. I can tell you that.
But they were phenomenal parents. They set so many good examples that honestly I try to use in my marriage and in my fatherhood. I have 3 amazing kids. I've got my son Bo is 5, my daughter Campbell's 3, and my other daughter Press is 6 months. And you know, Lacey, my wife Lacey, who comes from La Raja, Louisiana, which is, I mean, Marshallville is still smaller than La Raja, so I have that on her. But she grew up on a little dairy farm in South Louisiana, so we really come from similar places. But you know, and she'll tell you this: her family dynamic was different than mine, and I realized how blessed I was. I rarely saw my parents raise their voice at each other. I saw them, you know, have 3 older sisters, Caroline, Susan, and Sarah, and just, you know, the things that you have to do when you're raising girls and raising women in the house. And I've always, you know, I learned the importance of treating women the right way. I saw that. And then it was a unique situation how my dad's workplace was, you know, half a mile down the street. And so I grow up kind of bebopping in and out of his office. I helped him when I was in high school, delivered chemicals for him and all sort of stuff. But I was able to see him interact with a different person, you know, every 20 minutes. Old guy, young guy, white guy, black guy, whatever the case may be, super educated or, you know, never leaves the country. I mean, he just dealt with a different person constantly all day. He still does to this day in Marshallville. And I just saw him handle people, negotiate, talk about money, talk about products, talk about, you know, all this. And it was just really valuable for me. And he always treated people correctly, fairly. He didn't raise his voice. He's not real confrontational, but, you know, he's sort of stern and about his business when he has to be. And then my mom just has a heart of gold. And you just constantly felt love from my mother. And I still do. I mean, we talk just about every day. And so I got people, you know, an exposure to people skills, to hard work, to sort of business. And my mom was extremely successful in her line of work as well. But she was such a loving mother. She was a nurse. Yeah. And I mean, how many times did I see people mostly in Macon, where she worked at the medical center, but she ran the Lamaze program there, you know, kind of in the 80s and 90s. And so I had so many people that said, oh, yeah, you know, your mom delivered my baby. And literally, I would say 500 times growing up that happened. And it was just amazing to see, like, how much joy my mom had for, you know, other people, helping them out. It's such an important part of their lives. And so my parents have touched a lot of people there in Middle Georgia in their own ways.
Oh, there's absolutely no doubt about it. What I'm thinking as you're talking, and I may be wrong about this, I don't know if I've even said it before, but, you know, if you grow up in a big city, you kind of end up relating to whoever's in your circle. When you grow up in a town like Marshallville, Georgia, you have to relate to everybody. And just like you said, it's not that you have to, but you have the opportunity to relate to everybody. So you develop people skills that other people have a deer in the headlights looks when they go and all of a sudden they're confronted with somebody that's completely different from them, and they're not sure how to handle that. And I know when I look back on my life, I had the same opportunity being in the funeral business, dealing with people from all walks of life and building relationships. You saw the value in all of them. And I know you saw that in your parents, right?
I surely did. And, you know, I'd say another sort of layer of that, which I'll always say was just an unbelievable benefit for me. When I was at Georgia Tech, you have 100 plus guys in that locker room, and they're literally from all over the country, and they're from different backgrounds, and they're from different family situations. And some are going to be Calvin Johnson, number 2 overall pick in the draft. I mean, we had a walk-on linebacker come in with me that, I mean, the guy's probably running Dell Microsystems by now. I mean, we had guys from all over, and you just had to say, hey, I'm James Liipfert from Marshall. Okay, I'm DJ Jones from Camden County. I'm Calvin Johnson from Sandy Creek. I'm Michael Cox from Redland, Pennsylvania. And you know, that opportunity was incredible to meet people, learn what they're about, and then you get to know them. And you're going into, I shouldn't say battle, but you're working with them, trying to get ready for games for 4 or 5 years. So that sort of 5-year window of my life was an unbelievable opportunity to really learn, develop, sharpen people skills, and I still use it to this day.
And so one of the things that we forget, and it's really true, is that we don't know what we're doing now, how that can be used later in our life. And that's why it's so important to be living in the now and don't really be worried about what's going to happen 5 years from now, because what you're learning now will take you to where you need to go. I mean, that's really true, isn't it?
No, you don't know when that ticker inside of our chest is going to stop working. That thing might stop working in 10 minutes. You better enjoy it while you're doing it. So I mean, it's like
I'm an undertaker. I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, like I really try to live in the day, and I try to enjoy my family and love my wife and love my kids and call my sisters and call my parents and I just God has blessed me. I mean, good Lord, beyond belief. So I truly try not to take anything for granted ever.
It's amazing when you think about it. You didn't have one thing to do with Jimbo and Debbie Liipfert being your parents. You didn't choose them. You didn't say, I want them. God did that, brother, and he extended his grace to you, didn't he?
My dad was all set with his 3 girls, and don't let him tell you any different. My mom wanted the boys. So he was going to be a girl dad, and she wanted the boy. It's been a story that my mother has told for years. She goes, every time she'd pray for a boy, she'd eat green M&Ms. And so whenever I was growing up, whenever I was eating M&Ms, I'd always take the green ones out and give them to her. And that's just always been her thing. So she's fun. It's a good little story we have.
Oh, I love it. So let me ask you this. When you were in high school, I just had a podcast recently with Giles Amos, and he came out of the same school. And your path, what you guys did, it was very similar. You had scholarship offers to play football out of high school, mostly, I assume, small schools, but you chose to go to Georgia Tech, and just I think people know that you can't be a dummy and get in Georgia Tech. I'm a Georgia Bulldog through and through, but I can promise you got to be smart to go to Georgia Tech. But you chose to go there and to walk on. When you were in high school, you were playing all sports, and I know you were very good at every one of them. I mean, you were excelled. You're just an athlete. You were born an athlete, I think, and you worked on it. But how did you end up choosing football out of all that? How did you pursue football?
Well, I would say, my genetics eliminated basketball pretty quickly as a chubby 6-footer with a very short and vertical jump. So my basketball career ended whenever we got knocked out of the playoffs there in high school. But I really I loved all of them. I loved you, really just depending on which one I was playing at the moment. But I certainly was nothing more than a high school college player. I saw what a college baseball player looked like when I played with Bubba every day, and I said, well, I'm not maybe half as good as he is. So he should go play college baseball, and I certainly am not capable. But I was back and forth my senior year, and I'll be honest, some days I just wanted to go to, UGA, Auburn, whatever, just kind of go have fun and just live life and be a college guy. And then, part of me looked at the Sewanee's, Division III school up in Tennessee, or the UT Chattanoogas, or the Charleston Southerns, those kind of call it smaller schools. Thought about maybe playing there, and there's some big, I wasn't a big fish, but there's a small pond sort of element to those places. And then, Ronnie Jones, my high school coach at Westfield, said, I just think you're selling yourself short. And I always give him credit. I have a picture of him I'm looking at right now in my home office after he won his first state championship at Westfield. And I really am. I don't even know how much he knows that, but I'm really forever indebted to him because it always stuck with me. He says, I think you should go play at Georgia Tech if they want you to walk on.
When I was talking to Giles Amos the other day, he had high praise for Ronnie Jones as well. I can tell you that.
No doubt.
I actually ran into him at lunch the other day in one of Robin's after Giles Amos thing came out. Boy, I can only imagine the people he impacted and what he saw in you.
He did. And he just had a lot of faith in me, and he goes, I think you're a really good player. I think you're a college player. I think you should go give it a shot. And he says, if you don't do it, you're going to regret it. And for him to say that, it came with a lot of conviction. I said, man, I hate the thought of regret. Just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I'm always kind of up to do things and try new things. And so I said, you know what? If I hate it, I'll go do something else. But I did it, and I redshirted in 2004, and then played 4 seasons after that. And It was the best, one of the best decisions I've ever made. I had such a good time there. I was able to get a phenomenal education, met so many good people, won a lot of games, and it kind of helped spring me into my current career, which is, really what I wanted to do for a long time. So Georgia Tech has a huge place in my heart for sure.
Well, one of the things you didn't mention that you walked on, but at the end, before you were done, you earned a full athletic scholarship. When I was writing that article, that was what had just happened, I think, and it was just amazing when I realized what, the difference between a scholarship athlete and one that's not, and the ups and downs. I'm sure you had nights, I really want to keep doing this, but you did it. And if you hadn't done it, there's a good chance you wouldn't be sitting in the seat you're in right now.
No, there's no way.
One of your crowning moments, I'll never forget it. And I'm a Georgia guy, and I'm gonna pull for Georgia, but I can tell you, I've always been one of those people that if Georgia Tech is playing somebody else, I'd pull for them. I know I'm in the minority, but that's just the case. But when you guys beat Georgia in Athens, I guess that was your senior year. And
that was 2008,
they had a close-up of you with the hedges in your mouth. That had to be a crowning moment. I could not help but I hated we lost, but I loved it. I got to tell you.
I'm looking at the actual hedges right now. So my mom, I thought she was crazy at the time. My mom, I don't know, ordered it or found it. Basically, like plant or something preservation spray. She got the hedges. I mean, I might have had a whole bag full of hedges by the time I got home. But she sprayed them all. She's like, I'm gonna keep these. I'm gonna try to preserve them. And so we put it in a shadow box. I'm literally looking at it right now. Oh. And these hedges are 15 years old. And that game was a crazy game because it was kind of wet and nasty. We were down 28-12 at halftime. And Jonathan Dwyer popped a long 60-yard run on, I want to say, the first play of the third quarter. And we, 2-point conversion, touchdown, 2-point conversion. And then, so it's 28-28, and we kick off, and I'm on the kickoff team, and I can't remember who was returning it, but he fumbled, and that ball was like right under my side. And I want to say one of our other kickoff guys reached in there and grabbed it. And so we recovered a fumble. Next play, Dwyer, touchdown, 35-28. That game was insane.
Georgia Tech trying to end some frustration against the Bulldogs between the hedges for the title game. Jags and his leather jacket going. Now, Georgia and Mark Richt, he had never lost to Georgia Tech. Tech eliminated from consideration for the ACC title hunt, but they didn't really care. They just wanted to get this dog monkey off their back. Matthew Stafford, Mohamed Massaquoi. Stafford threw for 5 touchdowns. Dogs were up 28-12 at halftime, seemingly cruising. Now, Georgia Tech had scored a tie at 28. The kickoff after that, Richard Samuel's going to put it on the ground. Tech recovers, and if you see the ball comes loose just before the knee strikes down, Tech is all over it. The very next play, here goes Dwyer, Mayday.
Terrific job of blocking right up the middle, but keep an eye on Dwyer. The defender has the angle on him, and right to look at the cut. Lights out, he's gone.
Oh, my goodness.
And I want to say that was Stafford's last regular season game. I want to say A.J. Green was a young buck, Mohamed Massaquoi. I mean, there's a lot of NFL players on that field, and I'm glad we got him once.
I forgot Stafford was playing in that game.
He was really good. He was one of the most talented guys that I certainly didn't play a whole lot on defense, but he was one of the most talented guys I ever saw. Him, Matt Ryan, Antrell Roll from Miami. I mean, a lot of these, we played some awesome players during my time there.
Oh my God. So when you left Georgia Tech, you graduated from Georgia Tech, you got all kind of options. What are you going to do with your life? I'm sure you thought about a little bit of everything. Just with a Georgia Tech degree, you have a lot of options. But you took a scouting job of all places, the New England Patriots. And just talk about how that came about. How did you decide to get into scouting for the NFL?
I'll give you the story. So this was about October of 2008, that last season there, and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I think a lot of people, you get there at the end, okay, I got to enter the real world. What am I going to do? I just wanted to work in football. I just wanted to work in the NFL. I didn't know what clean toilets, sell tickets. I didn't really know what scouts did or how they did it. I mean, I would see guys in random NFL logos show up at our practices for every day for 5 years, but it never really dawned on me like, okay, I know these guys are scouts. Like, what are they doing here? And so you just don't think about that stuff when you're in college. my strength coach was Eric Siano, who's the head strength coach of Buffalo Bills. So Coach Siano says, hey, there's a couple scouts here watching tape. We had a designated room for scouts to watch film. You know, you spend all day there watching film. And he said, go in there and sit down with them. And just tell them to work in NFL. And I've told them who you are and yada, yada. So I go in there, and there was a gentleman named Todd Vasberry that works for the Colts, and Daryl Moody. Daryl works for the University of North Carolina program now, and Todd is actually still with the Colts. And I just sat there with those two gentlemen, and I learned about scouting, and I gave them intel about my teammates, which I've come to know is very valuable. If you can get intel from current teammates, it usually goes a long way. So I'm telling them about, you know, my teammates, Daryl Richard and guys like that. And I remember Todd looked at me and says, you'd be an excellent scout. You should get into this. Now, and I said, what? He goes, no, you'd love it. Like, you should do this. And I had never even thought about it. I said, okay, yeah, sounds all right. I'll talk about it. Yeah, I'll think about it. And so I ended up, that meeting helped me go to Indianapolis for the 2009 Combine. And I actually was a week-long intern for the Colts, and they were great. Tom Telesco was the personnel director, who's the general manager of the LA Chargers now. So Tom was there, and he kind of ran things. But Todd and John Shaw, who's the pro scouting director for the Colts, all these guys are just so good to me. They didn't know me from Adam. But I was there for a week, and I ran and got coffee, and I measured players, and I did everything I could. And one thing I did was our interview table was next to the Patriots. And so I met Bill O'Brien, who's back there as the offensive coordinator. Dante Scarnecchia who was the offensive line coach that was there in New England for years and years, who was just recently introduced to the Patriots Hall of Fame, or inducted to the Patriots Hall of Fame. And I just met a lot of people from the Patriots. So I kind of had that tucked away. And then my special teams coach, Charles Kelly, who's the secondary coach of the Colorado Buffaloes now, Charles Kelly had coached at Nicholls State with John Robinson, who at the time was the Patriots scouting director, and then John went on to be the GM of the Titans for a number of years. So Charles got me in touch with John, and Charles said, hey, this kind of overachiever type of guy plays special teams for me, wants to get into scouting. You got anything for him? And that was kind of all she wrote. I got an interview with the Patriots, and I went up there, and it's amazing how life is full circle. The personnel director at the time was Nick Caserio, who is now the GM of the Houston Texans. So Nick is okay. It's amazing. And Nick's like, I consider Nick almost family. He's my boss, but he's the best guy in the world to work for, and I'm very lucky to come back and work for him.
That is amazing.
It really is.
What a story. All those connections. So I know when you were there, I also remember seeing you in the room with Bill Belichick and all that. You guys, I looked it up, and I think while you were there, you had – how many years were you there? 9 years?
I was there for 9, yes, sir.
Yeah, 9 division titles, 4 AFC championship, 2 Super Bowls, right?
Yeah,
that's pretty close. Yeah,
we went to the A. I was there for 9. And I say we, certainly the players. I was just on the road trying not to screw it up. But I was a scouting assistant for 2 years, and I was an area scout, national scout for 7. And so those 7 years I was on the road, I believe we went to the AFC Championship game all 7 of those seasons. And so to be able to just like experience that level of success was just unbelievable. And so always, it was just awesome. And so now, as you move on from there, or you stay there, whatever, you're chasing that level of success that you had when you first started, and it's a different sort of chase, but man, it's fun nonetheless.
People have no idea what goes on behind the scenes in scouting. For you right now, what do you got? Really, 15 or 16 scouts? Is that?
We have 7 guys on the road that are full time. Their only job is to scout college players for the draft, and then there's in-house. From a administrative standpoint, and there's a pro scouting sort of wing to the personnel department. So the whole scouting department, call it roughly 15 to 16 people. But my job for the last 5 years as our college scouting director has really been to just facilitate and manage sort of our college scouting efforts as a whole. And a huge part of that is just constant communication with our road scouts who, you talk about a job that a lot of people think they could probably do and don't know really what goes into it. And I say that sort of bragging on our guys there, because we have 7 just phenomenal guys that do the job at a high level. And it's a lot of travel. It's a lot of time away from family. It's and you're part, call it private investigator, you're part talent evaluator, you're part, BS detector. I
Right.
mean, everything in between. You're just trying to figure out players and get the right players in the building for the Houston Texans. And I say, it's a complete group effort, collective, but it cannot be done without really, really good road scouts. You just have to have those guys.
So you've done that. So you know what it's like to be on the road doing one of those things.
I do.
To get the guy in the building, there's got to be a great organization going on. You got people doing different stuff. As a supervisor or director, I'm sure all that's coming up through you. So there's a lot of responsibility, a lot of organization. Are there times you go out, you're looking for somebody, and then you see somebody else that you recognize, and all of a sudden, wow, who's this guy? Does that happen, or is that
that definitely happens? And you know what does happen sometimes is you may be at a school, and when you're constantly developing relationships with people at the school, and our job is if you're going to put your name on a player and grade them at a certain level, it's your level of conviction. It's what do you see, but naturally conversations turn into, hey, who's your favorite guy? Who's the guy that you like? Who maybe you think's maybe a little overhyped, whatever. And I always like it when there's guys that almost are kind of underappreciated or under the radar within a program, and that yeah, he's okay. This player, player X is okay. And the more you watch player X, you're like, man, I like this guy. I think this program is maybe a little low. Maybe they're just so used to this guy, but I really like this guy. I'm going to maybe grade this guy a little higher than maybe conventional wisdom would tell you where to grade him. And so, I wouldn't say this is probably not a great example of what I just said, but I remember I was at practice in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I was there, and I was one of the main players I was watching was defensive lineman named Trey Flowers. And we took Trey in New England the year before we beat Atlanta in that Super Bowl. So I want to say we took him in the 15 draft in the 4th round. I want to say he was picked like 101 or something like that. Well, I remember being with a scout, and we all kind of talk amongst each other. And he was like, I say, where you got Flowers? What do you think of Trey? He was like, I got him in the 6th round. He's kind of this and that, sort of negative. And I saw him play Alabama in the rain, and it was gross weather, and Bama's just trying to run the ball and kind of put Arkansas away. And Bielema was there trying to get the program sort of off the ground. And Trey Flowers just kept hammering people. I mean, they couldn't block him. He's so strong, and he just played really tough run defense. He's rushing the passer. And I remember thinking, because Trey was not this elite premier athlete from a speed perspective, but what Trey had was really long arms, really strong hands, and he was super, super country tough. I want to say he's Huntsville, Alabama. Dad built houses, a bunch of brothers. He was just tough. And I met him at the Senior Bowl, and he was like the last guy I interviewed, and talked to him for about literally 10 minutes. It was just me and him in this big open lobby. And I told him, I said, Trey, I'm all set with you, man. Normally these interviews go 30, 35 minutes. I said, I'm all set, bud. All I need is 10 minutes. I can look in his eyes and think, this dude is about as tough and blue collar as they come. And then, we get Trey, sort of has somewhat of a redshirt year in 2015. And then in 16, Trey has 2.5 sacks in the Super Bowl to help us beat Atlanta. And it was not me. I was not the only person. I certainly didn't discover Trey. But it's a story that I tell guys all the time. Trey's a 4th-round pick. Those 4th-round picks or 7th-round picks or undrafted free agents, those guys can end up make massive impacts. It's not just always about, number 2 overall picks or 1st-round picks. It's a scout will tell you, man, it's almost more fun when you get big-time impact out of a guy in the 4th, 5th, 6th round.
Oh, I can imagine, because you had to go to bat for him, I'm sure.
You put your reputation on the line anytime you grade any player. But when you grade a guy, and I remember giving him a really good grade, and I want to say he ran 4.8 or something like that. And again, he was I want to say a shade over 6'2", about 265. But, Trey just had these arms that when he dangled his arms, it almost his knuckles would scrape the ground. He just had 34 and change inch arms, and he was just so strong. And that was sort of that when he would put his hands on people in New England, he could jerk you around because he had length, and he had strong hands, and he was just real tough.
It has to be fulfilling I know you're not taking full credit for that, but I know that you were instrumental. You were a piece of it, of changing somebody's life, that may not have happened if you didn't have this gut. I get this idea that you guys are flooded with data. You got all
you
got
sure.
more data and metrics and all this stuff about these people, but there's some gut stuff that you also have to consider, and there's the person you're dealing with, and just like you said, you're looking at him in his eyes and you know what his family did, and it goes beyond just the data, right?
It's 1,000%, and there has been so many great things that have been created in the last 5 to 10 years from a data and analytics standpoint, which we use, and it's really good, and it helps you be very efficient, and it helps you maybe look at things from a different viewpoint. But it sounds cliche, but I firmly believe it's not. There just is no way to replicate personal interaction or scouts when they go to a practice and what they observe on that particular day. I try to tell our guys, just what your eyes tell you at a practice, is extremely important, and it can't be, found from a data or an analytics or a model or anything like that. What you saw that day could be something really special. So always have your eyes and ears open.
Yeah.
And I totally agree.
So just think about, throw football out of the door. Think about life. And there's people listening to this that may not have, quote, the metrics that they need to take it to the next level in life. But if they've got that fire in the belly and they've got that twinkle in their eye or whatever it is, because I've known some of the smartest people in the world that were idiots because they didn't have that burning desire and didn't have that whatever it is that's intangible that some people don't have. You can be smart, you can have all the tools, but it doesn't mean that you're going to put them to practice. That's for sure. In life, I'm not talking about football, but just in life.
I completely agree. It's just, really, it's what do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What are your goals? And then the next step is, what are you doing? What is it? Whatever the saying is, a goal without a plan of attack is just a wish. Whatever. I'm sure I butchered that, but you gotta identify what you want to do, and then what are you doing to get there? And I'm certainly a work in progress, but I have goals, but every day it's like, what am I doing to get there? So
think about your life, your career. You have worked your butt off, and that's true. You worked when other people were sleeping. You were working. You got this desire to do whatever it is you can do better than anybody else, and that's another reason that you're sitting in this seat. So, my point is, for people listening, you may not be a 5-star athlete, or you may not be a 5-star person that got all the tools to do anything they want in life. But I guarantee you, there are people that are, like you just said, that are 4th-round picks that can be great.
No, there are. I would say the older I get, okay, so if someone is, whether it's a career change or want to reach out to somebody, approach something, do something in life, I look at things like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, somebody's going to tell you no.
Yeah.
I say, if you want something, go get it, or how do I get there? And I just think in life, we only have a short amount of time here. You need to be aggressive. And don't wait on things to happen. Go make things happen. And, as I'm looking at my 2 kids playing in the hallway right now, like outside my office door, like that's going to be the mindset that hopefully they grow up with. Like, what do you want to do, and what are you doing to go get it? And whether it's sports or playing the violin or, writing code for a computer program, I want them to be urgent and aggressive in their life and try to go, be go-getters, because I just think that's the only way to go through life. I don't like sitting around waiting on things to happen or wasting daylight. I don't like to really sleep in. I like to kind of get going in the morning. So
you're exactly right. But the problem is, there's a lot of people that don't know that, or at least are not doing it. There's only a few, and that's why there's only a few that rise up. I know that's true. Most people live in mediocre lives. They're doing what they do to keep from losing. And there are a few people that say, what have I got to do to win? And that means you got to put yourself out and be willing to fail to win. You got to be willing to lose to win, or you won't ever know what winning is. So I'm going to go back to football just a minute, James, because I know I can't keep you all day here. This is something that I'm just personally interested in. What separates a great athlete or that's football player, a great football player from what you call an elite football player? Is anybody that gets drafted in NFL considered elite, or do you draft great? Just tell me what that is, and in the end, what are you looking for? What gets you excited about people that you're scouting?
I would say the word elite is a very, very strong word, and the word elite probably gets thrown around a little too much. When I think elite, I think Kobe, LeBron, Calvin Johnson, Tom Brady, JJ Watt, those like elite. But I think of like one percenters in the NFL, and those type of guys. And I've been just fortunate enough to be in the presence of, call it Calvin, Brady, JJ for a couple seasons, Gronkowski for a handful of years. But those guys, yes, you have to have, call it top 10% talent level. But those guys in their own way, their passion for football and their passion for getting better, and they never really lose their edge. I mean, I would say LeBron's probably a perfect example. I mean, watch how hard he plays in year 20 as they're trying to beat Denver right now. They about game one, Denver beat him the other night, but they about made a comeback. He's still playing his butt off. I remember being in high school and watching him debut in Sacramento, game one against the Kings. And now I'm sitting here 37 years old with 3 kids, and he's older than me, and he's still playing the NBA. So he has rare DNA. Tom Brady has rare DNA. Gronk, sort of in his own way, has rare DNA. But what specifically to football, their passion level for ball and wanting to get better, and their humility when it comes to working on their craft. I was fortunate to play with Calvin for 3 seasons, and Calvin would win every time we ran. Calvin would win every sprint. Anytime we would do, hey, we're maxing out on hang cleans or something, Calvin's top 5 on the team. But it's usually Calvin and 4 other offensive linemen. I saw like, okay, that's what greatness looks like. And I
Really?
certainly don't have his athletic ability, and I really don't have his level of, passion to be great, because he is a Hall of Famer. I mean, came in the same recruiting class as a Hall of Famer, which is awesome to say. I've actually never said that out loud, but
That's amazing.
I mean, but I saw him work, and I was fortunate enough when I was in New England to see Brady work. And I mean, even in JJ's last season in 2020 Houston, we were not very good. We won 4 games, but man, JJ practiced really hard every day and studied the heck out of his opponents. I'd always get out there on a Wednesday practice, and every Wednesday for about 2 straight months when we just weren't very good, it wasn't a very fun season, I would find JJ and I'd say, all right, tell me about this week's right tackle that you're going up against. And he would just give me a, bullet point after bullet point after bullet point on here's what I look for. Here's what this guy can't do this week. Here's what he's really good at. And it's like, God, this guy's still studying, still going really hard. And man, we're not very good right now. And it would just kind of like show me, okay, this is why this guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Wow. You're having a blast. What's the most fulfilling part of your job, James?
Oh, that's a great question. The most fulfilling part, I would say, is, there's so many good things. I mean, at its very core, and the most simplest way to look at it is you are involved in the best sport on the earth. And I personally I'm fortunate enough to work for a great team, a great ownership group, a great general manager. I'm surrounded by good people, and it's a building coming together to try to win the game on Sunday. And it's not, with all due respect to certainly any other industry, and I know how blessed I am to work in football, but it's not a call it sales job to where you're, hey, I'm trying to earn money for the company, or I'm trying to, sell devices for the company, or whatever. Like we're trying to come together from a marketing department to an athletic training staff to a scouting staff to a coaching staff to line up on Sunday with our players and hopefully beat the team on the other sideline. And so it's just an exhilarating feeling when you can see young players that you may have had a hand in bringing to the team, and they are the reason why you won that game on Sunday. And it's just fun to be a part of something like that. And again, I just never take it for granted. It can be taken away at any moment. So I just don't take it for granted. But that is the most exhilarating thing to the whole thing, is just having a job that gives you, an avenue to compete is really cool.
I used to go to Houston often. The company I worked for, SCI, was in Houston, so I'm in and out all the time. I stayed at a little inn at the ballpark right across from Minute Maid Park. So I went to a lot of Astros games just because I like baseball. Sometimes I'd get there in the fifth inning, get a ticket for $2 and sit in the cheap seats. But I became an Astros fan. I'm a Braves fan first, but I became an Astros fan. And I can tell you.
You and me both.
I'm a Houston Texans fan, knowing that you're there and what you're doing. Man, I hope you have a great year. Your organization has helped your team with this draft. You got a new quarterback, Will Anderson. You got a couple of great players, that is for sure. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. But before I let you get off, I know you mentioned Lacey. She's from Louisiana. I guess you were living there when you met her, right?
So quick one on that one is I was the Southwest area scout for the Patriots, and I was single, and I was living in Austin, Texas. And so this was the summer of 2012, and I went to spend the weekend in New Orleans with a fellow Westfield class of 04 graduate by the name of Kyle Greer.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to go hang with Kyle, and Kyle's girlfriend at the time, who is now his wife and mother of his 3 boys, Kyle's girlfriend introduced me to Lacey. Basically, I met my wife, and I say this is like the Louisiana love story. I met her on the dance floor in Killian, Louisiana, in a swamp bar called Tin Lizzie's. You literally, if you fall off the balcony at Tin Lizzie's, you can get ate up by some Louisiana gators. I mean, they're right there. And so this thing is in the swamp, and it was just, music playing, and
Listen, there's nothing like coon-ass country. I can tell you. I traveled all through there. Listen, if you go to any place to eat, everybody gets up and dances, and it's great. It's a whole different culture, isn't it? I love it.
I love it, and I'll always have so much love for the state of Georgia, but I also haven't lived in Georgia since I was 21 years old, and so that's, we call it 15, 16 years now.
About half your life.
I've been in Louisiana. I met Lacey, and I knew I was going to marry her after about 2 dates. And so we did the distance thing for a year, and then I moved over there. And just pretty soon after moving over there, we were engaged and bought a house. We moved to Houston. We've since moved back. But we kind of wanted to raise our kids in small town Louisiana, because I truly think the state is very special. And I'd say the southern, I haven't spent a whole lot of time in northern Louisiana, but southern Louisiana is just to your point, it is a completely unique culture. Unique people love it. People from here don't leave here. People love it. And I like small town America. And so we live actually in a little town called Hammond, which is kind of a prototypical, whatever you want to call it, small town. And we just love it. So that's what
I had a funeral home in New Iberia. And
there you go.
I did a podcast with a guy, Kenny Pellerin. He's one of the funniest guys, and he talks about that culture. I need to send you a link to it.
Please do.
Lacey will love it. It's a different culture, but some of the most hospitable people I've ever known in my
100%.
life. Yeah,
100%.
They take somebody like me as a complete outsider, and you become one of them in a hurry. That is for true.
They introduce themselves, they shake your hand, and they crack open a beer for you, and all in the span of about 2 seconds. And you're like, well, I guess I'm drinking a beer with this guy. So,
they do not hesitate to take you in.
They don't. No, they don't.
Yeah,
it's a great place down here. So she's a little Louisiana firecracker, and God bless me with her. And she's a incredible wife. She's an amazing mother. I mean, her patience gets tested on a daily basis with these 3 rugrats we got running around. But
my goodness.
I've been there. She's awesome. I know. My parents tell me to soak it up, because it ain't gonna be like this forever.
Yep. I want to meet her. She's gorgeous.
Thank you so much. I agree with that.
So, what advice do you have, James, for young people? You've kind of hit on it, but I want to button it up. What have you got advice for young people that might be listening to this, who have dreams of big things, and they think, I don't know how to get there. What do I do? What is your advice to them?
I would say find a way to, in whatever field that you want to work in, find a way to make yourself valuable, and make call it business owner or human resources director, whoever the person is, the person maybe you're interviewing with, like, what am I bringing to the table to provide value to this company so I can get my foot in the door and get a job. And then once I get in, I need to kick the door in when I get there. This like, hey, I want to do this. I want to be an investment banker. Okay, well, like, why is this investment banking firm? Why should they want to hire you? And then answer that question on your own. Provide value, acquire skills, whether it's watch YouTube or get on the phone with somebody. And I just think young people have to go out and bust their butts to acquire knowledge and make connections, and the value of good eye contact, good handshakes, handwritten letters, knowing someone's background before you talk to them. If I were to go, I want to get a job at this bank, that CEO or that human resources person I'm going to talk to, I'm going to know where they went to college. I'm going to know how many siblings they have, what's their wife's name, what are they, you got to go in there and really be aggressive and urgent and get a job. And once you get a job, be the first one in and the last one out. And Mark Cuban talks about all the time the fear of failure. Between the phrase, the fear of failure and pressure is a privilege, I love those both. The pressure is a privilege. That to me, like, that's such a life thing. Like, okay, I got a lot of pressure. I need to provide for my family, or I need to do a good job for the Texans. That's a privilege. It's a privilege to have people dependent on you. It gives you life meaning, and it gives you a reason to wake up before the sun comes up in the morning. So I love it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I just think young people in general, you have to decide that I'm going to be a go-getter and I'm going to live my life in urgency and I'm going to go get what I want. But I'm also at the same time, I'm going to be humble about it and I'm going to work hard, and no job is too small.
Well, one thing that's interesting, I'm talking to a man, folks, that's 37 years old. He has done a lot of stuff in the NFL, and not only that, but in college at Georgia Tech and in high school. He's a man with a lot of experience. He has knocked down doors, and he has been aggressive. So he's talking about something that he's done. But I also know, James, that there's no telling if I may be in the nursing home 20 years from now, but if I have this conversation with you 20 years, there's no telling what you will be doing, the story you will tell. Who knows? But I at this point in your life, 37 years old, 3 kids, beautiful wife, the stage you're in, what do you want people to know about James Liipfert? When your kids listen to this, and it'll be out there, when you're my age, what do you want them to know about you at 37 years old?
That's a very humbling question to answer. I would say I don't want them to know anything about football. Football does not matter. The Texans don't matter. Georgia Tech doesn't matter. Football is just something I've kind of done and I've been fortunate enough to be a part of. I want them to know that my parents were proud of me, and that's always been sort of life goal number one for me. I want my dad and mom to kind of beam with pride when they talk about me and my family. That's very important to me, and it's very important to me that my kids love me and get excited when I walk through the door and learn from me. But I want them to treat people the right way. I'm trying to teach my 5-year-old how to shake hands and have good eye contact and speak the right way and have good manners. And my legacy is going to be about, did I make my parents proud, and did I raise good kids, and was I a good husband to my wife? Like, football is nothing. So, and job titles and all that those are very, very, can come and go and don't matter. Money doesn't matter, and Super Bowl rings don't matter. What matters is life, and depending on your beliefs, is what's God going to think of your resume when you get to the pearly gates. That's very important. And I just think legacy needs to be, he treated people well, he was humble, and he was appreciative, and he had a lot of gratitude towards a lot of people that helped him get to where he maybe doesn't get. Again, it really doesn't matter. But I think life is way more about your personal interactions and who you affected and helped on the way, rather than maybe what you did.
Folks, this is James Liipfert. He's director of scouting for the Houston Texans. I've known him since he was in the 8th grade. James, thank you for so much for doing this. People will learn a little bit about scouting, but they're going to learn a lot about living and life. So thank you so much, my friend.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bruce. I had a great time, and now I've got to go get back on daddy duty. So
Yeah, you go do it.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.